But yeah, and I think Baldwin understood that very clearly. That this is one of the major appeals of books in general. Listeners to this podcast probably feel the same way. So, yeah, you're always, oh, it's uniquely my suffering, but then you read a few books from 200 years ago and you're like, oh, actually, every human being feels this. Like, every single person on earth feels this. But yeah, and then my first question about this before we even get to text is, yeah, is this a coming of age story? Because he's a little bit older. Like, he's like clearly the main character's like in his 20s, something like that.
Yeah, but I think it still is that in some way. I mean, I still read it a lot like a coming of age story with this person who doesn't really like know who they are and they're kind of a little bit lost, even, if they don't quite realize it immediately. So yeah, I would still describe it as a coming of age story where we have a character who's like learning who they are in the world.
Yeah, and then the restrictions on that too, right? So this is 1956 is when the book was published, based around that time. But and as we all know, in 1956, if you were openly gay, it wasn't a good time for you, right? Like, it was
Yeah.
not a welcoming
It
situation.
was not okay to be gay
Yeah, like
during
you
this
had,
time.
and I guess that's why this book is so famous, because it really does capture the idea of struggling between, the reality and then the projection of what you want the world to see, kind of thing. But yeah, I guess I kept wanting to put this in like a coming of age category, but like we said, it's not quite there, but it could be. You can make the argument. Uh, yeah, I guess I'm fine with saying that because I guess he does learn some lessons eventually by the end. Maybe you
The
could
epigraph
say.
is section 33 of Song of Myself, by the way. I understand the large hearts of heroes, the courage of present times and all times. How the skipper saw the crowded and rudderless wreck of the steamship, and how death chasing it up and down the storm. How he knuckled how he knuckled tight and gave not back an inch, and was faithful of days and faithful of nights. Blah 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 blah. How the silent old-faced infants and the lifted sick and the happy and the sharp-lipped unshaved men, all this I swallow. It tastes good. I like it well. It becomes mine. I am the man. I suffered. I was there.
Yeah. And the reason I say this is kind of a coming of age story, you can make a good argument that it is. On page 16, the quote, like what I highlighted, is when he's talking about his father's attitude. Um, and this is second paragraph on page 16, kind of in the middle. It says, and then again, I was undergoing with my father what the very young inevitably undergo with their elders. I was beginning to judge him, and the very harshness of this judgment, which broke my heart, revealed, though I could not have said it then, how much I had loved him, how that love, along with my innocence, was dying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it's not so much like a teen coming of age. This is like an older adult coming of age kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, it's still the death of innocence, right?
Yeah,
Which is kind of what coming of age really is.
right, and all that good stuff. And really, the first chapter is about 20 pages of backstory with that. So we start learning about this backstory.
Yeah.